They will tailor the program to suit the needs of the individual. They might talk through it instead or choose a different way to communicate. It's completely determined by what is happening for that person in that moment.
Hello, I'm Mariam Tadros, and joining with me today is Marion and Tara, who are leading a session around Before Blue, which is a partnership taking prevention to the next step. This session is part of the Impact Stream and is sponsored by the TAC. Marion is a registered psychologist and is the acting director of Comcare's mental health and research team. This is a team that collaborates with stakeholders across the Comcare scheme to drive innovation, inform better practice, and deliver evidence based programs and services. Marion has a background in developing and implementing programs and support for mental health capability across all levels of government, which does include emergency services and non government agencies. Tara is a senior leader in Beyond Blue's services team and has been an integral part of the growth of Beyond Blue's early intervention program called New Access. She now drives the expansion of Beyond Blue's workplace offering Before Blue. Her background spans business growth, product and marketing across commercial and not-for-profit sectors. Ladies, welcome and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
Before Blue is a really, I guess, an eye-capturing name, and it is something that immediately resonates with people who are familiar with Beyond Blue, which most folks are, which is a wonderful thing. And the Before Blue really indicates the proactive nature of the program that you're running, which is lovely. One of the things that perhaps is less publicised is how mental health programs can support those that are neurodivergent. Can you help us to understand how does this program support neurodiverse needs?
Great question. Thank you. One of the really important features and principles of the model of care that we use, which is low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy, is a person centred approach. And so when someone comes into the program, we're really looking for symptoms of mild to moderate anxiety and depression. And that's what our mental health coaches will work with first. And then they will look at the needs of the individual. And across the more than 10 years that we've been running it, we have supported a number of different neurodivergent people. And what happens when they're working through a program of support for the individual, they will tailor the program to suit the needs of the individual. So, for example, if there's something that's written, they might talk through it instead, or they might share a video or choose a different way to communicate and share something with the participant to ensure that it is easier for them to achieve, not completely within their comfort zone, but a little bit outside of their comfort zone, but still achievable for them. And then they'll provide suggestions as to how they can stay on track and suggest, maybe lean on a friend for guidance, make lists, and to ensure people are better equipped to handle and can move through the program as easily as possible. And certainly our coaches have had years of experience dealing with all sorts of people, and neurodivergent is no exception.
That's wonderful to hear. What I'm hearing is there's a tailored approach. It's not a one size fits all,
Yeah.
even in neurodivergence.
Yeah.
So what we hear sometimes in industry is we have a standard program and then we have a program for neurodivergence, but
Yeah.
that program isn't different in and of itself. It's still a one size fits all for this category that's
Yeah.
been labelled.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from yourself, Tara, is there's an impetus to support those with neurodivergent needs, but that impetus is supported by a person to person approach. It's adaptable, it's agile. There's tangible resources that can support that person in terms of collateral. So there's different videos or materials that they can lean into. And if that's not really suitable, that's okay. We're thinking about other things, the other people that are in their life that could support them with different things and some practical and small things that they can manage on their own, which is just absolutely wonderful to hear. And just in the theme of those that have perhaps higher needs or different needs, how does the program support escalating pathways for those with higher mental health needs?
Yeah, well, from a process point of view, and then I might hand to Marion. From a process point of view, when someone comes into the program, they have a conversation with their coach about their needs, and they'll also complete 3 questionnaires. And that between the conversation and the questionnaires, that really helps determine where a person is at and their suitability to the program. And that's determined at every single session. So that from a risk and a governance point of view, we're ensuring the person is always safe. If a person's needs are too complex, or they might need a different type of support, for example, so, relationship specific or financial specific or parenting, the coach might refer them out to another service. But from an escalation point of view, if someone needs to be stepped up, the coach will suggest a number of different avenues that they could choose. For example, they might be stepped up back to their GP, and the coach will work with them. They'll write a letter for them and they'll refer them back. It might also mean that they get referred back to their own organisation's EAP if it's more of a crisis situation. Alternatively, there's Lifeline, 000 has been called in different instances. So there's a number of different options. It's completely determined by what is happening for that person in that moment.
What I might add to that is that the program is very much focused on low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy, and the program is supported by strong governance and a clinical framework. So it does a really good job of sticking in that lane and then consistently being able to provide additional support if required through the step up process that Tara mentioned. What we often also say and often see with employees who are participating in this program is that even though someone might come through the assessment process and might have higher needs than the program can offer and support, that signposting to more appropriate services, it still gives the employer the opportunity to make sure that employees who are potentially struggling or that who might need support are still being supported. So even though, as I mentioned, the program might not be appropriate for them, they're still then linked in and still then have a plan to receive the appropriate support.
And the clinical framework there is giving some specific criteria around if these behaviours are being exhibited, we're here. If we're starting to go over to this side and then we're showing these things, we're now in this particular category. So the step-up process is tangibly leaning back on something that has an evidence-based, researched, well thought through idea of why that is so, and then what sorts of complementary therapies will be necessary if that person falls into a different criteria that they were in. And perhaps even conversely, in the other way, if someone is receiving support and treatment and they were at a higher level category and their behaviours were improving and they were starting to step themselves down, they could also see their progress as they move through their treatment.
Yeah, I think there's opportunities along the way for that. And the participant is always involved with those measures that are taken, with the accountability and the check-ins at every session. They're involved in the process, so it won't come to any surprise when the coach needs to have that conversation with them.
Yes, I understand. Now, in terms of the referral process, can you help me to understand, is it a self-referral process or is there some other way in which a person can get involved?
Yeah, it really depends on what the organisation wants to achieve. Some of the organisations we work with make it available to all employees, so they'll advertise it on their intranet, they'll promote it via newsletters and so on, back of toilet doors. But some also hang on to the packages, we call them, the sessions available for participants, and use them for people that they perceive to be most in need. And they might suggest to or talk to their mental health and their wellbeing teams, for example, and say, we've got these resources. If someone's coming to you, this might be another program of support that a person might be interested in. So it does completely depend on what the needs of the organisations are.
Now, in terms of needs of organisations and the way that organisations run, I know certainly in my own organisation we have an EAP that's there to support us, and it's fantastic. How does this kind of intervention sit inside that ecosystem?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's one that we get quite often, and I think ecosystem is a great way to describe the suite of services that employers put in place to support employees. And it really, at the end of the day, is about giving employees the options and the choice and empowering them to make the decision in terms of what sort of support service is more appropriate for them at that moment in time. And so often I think we like to explain it along that mental health continuum where most of us often sit in the green and the yellow zones, and that's quite healthy. It's quite healthy to have a small amount of stress. It keeps us stimulated and challenged, right through to the orange and the red, where our mental health might start to suffer in terms of, daily functioning, in terms of ability to remain productive and engaged in the workplace as well. So this program sits really nicely in sort of the green and the yellow end of that continuum, in that, as I said before, it is very much targeted to mild to moderate anxiety and or depression. And so I would even those in the green end of the zone who want to have conversations around, well, how do I proactively have a conversation around goal setting with my employer coming up. I've got my PDP coming up, my performance development plan. I'm really nervous about it. How do I approach it? This program can be used in that way. It's being used quite creatively with the employees that are on board at the moment. So that would be how we have seen the program being offered, in terms of the EAPs can sit in sort of the orange and the red ends of the continuum, and this is where they do complement each other really well.
Yeah, and I suppose if we do take more advantage of the green and yellow opportunities, perhaps we won't need to get to the red. We won't need to compound and keep it in until we come to a point where the anxiety or the depression is not as mild as it could have been, because mental health can be quite cumulative. It could be a string of completely unrelated scenarios that have occurred over a period of time that have compounded. But if you're seeking that early intervention support as soon as possible before blue, then you've got that opportunity to really look after yourself, just as you would another aspect of your physical well-being, right? Well, Tara and Marion, I'm so very grateful that you spent some time with us today to talk about this program. It is a very important initiative for people to know about and to take advantage of. Thank you also for being innovative enough to see that this is, an imperative for your scheme. Comcare, as we know, does deal with people who have some of the toughest jobs in Australia. They have a very high duty of care in their roles. And it's not uncommon for them to be disproportionately affected in their mental health. So really appreciate that sincerely. Thank you.